everybody. So you can see what part of the planet we're on, and we've got by our clothing. Obviously, it's summer for some people. Australians is in the middle of winter, I think, but nobody's coming from Australia. I think it's in the middle of the night for them. No, it's not actually. It's morning for them. Okay, people.
Hi, everybody. Anybody who's new, this is the Be Your Own Therapist class with Venerable Robina. I keep saying class, but we do learn a lot from you. And she's going to help us unpack our mind.
That's the plan. Okay. So, okay, here we are for this little hour to do exactly what Alexa said. So this is I mean, we talk about it often enough, but let me talk about it again. You know, we talk about that. We go to a therapist, you know, don't we? In our culture, we're very good at that. We have wonderful methods for helping us understand our lives and get support for our struggles and our problems. But what's so distinctly and utterly and completely different, no, not completely, but quite profoundly different, the Buddhist approach to dealing with your problems. You know, you could say very accurately, if you're really trying to use the Buddhist approach, you wouldn't ever discuss the external problem. You wouldn't need to discuss the external problem. Now, that's a big shock to us, isn't it? Because as far as we are concerned, the external event is the problem. Do you understand? It's not even being sarcastic. It's literally what we think. The problem is the boyfriend. The problem is the bad food. The problem is the weather. The problem is the politics. The problem is what your mother did. I'm not being sarcastic even. This is just the analysis that we use. And interestingly, it's the analysis that ego uses. In other words, there's two things going on. There's what our mind is doing, and then the event that triggers what goes on in our mind. So as far as we are concerned, the event is the main thing. And so we have to discuss the event, discuss what he said, discuss what he did. Then, you know, but the Buddhist approach, you wouldn't need, if you're really doing the job properly of being a Buddhist, being your own therapist. What you're looking at isn't the event. What you're looking at is what goes on in your mind. Isn't it? So it's very fast. I mean, we go, yeah, I get that. I can see I'm angry. I can see I'm depressed. I can see I'm anxious. We know that. That's what triggers us to go to the therapist, you know. But the logic we use very strongly, and that appears to be the truth to us, is the event is the problem. You know, the event is the cause of why I'm anxious. The event is the cause of why I'm angry. It is the cause of why I'm depressed. So we have to look into the events, and we look into the past especially too, because it's true, the past does, you know, impact upon the present. There's no question about that. That's pretty logical. But when we look into the past, we only look at the past events. So no, why is Robina angry all the time? Well, we would look into what happened to Robina to cause her to become angry. What happened way back then? We're sort of looking for needles in haystacks, isn't it? Now, the Buddha wouldn't argue with that. He says, that's okay. That's very helpful. But what he would say is, you're only looking at the catalyst. It's a good word. You're only looking at the catalysts. You're not looking at the actual thing that's the problem. You're looking at the conditions. One way they talk all the time, there are in Buddhism, when you learn there are main causes, direct causes, principal causes, secondary causes. Well, you can say exactly the same for a plant. You know, you can see that, you know, the water and the soil are crucial causes for you to get a rose. But you all know the main cause of the rose is the rose seed. That's a good analogy for the Buddhist approach. So, but this is very difficult for us and quite shocking. So the secondary causes, the water, you know, the fertilizer, the sun, the soil, they're the events. That's what your brother did, your father did, your boyfriend did, the weather did, the boss did. These are the external events. They're merely the secondary causes. This is pretty shocking, but it's a good way to put it. They are merely the secondary causes. They are the conditions. The key cause, for Buddha, there are two main causes of a problem. Equally, there are two main causes of something good as well. I mean, the logic of karma applies to both good things and bad things. The logic of, like if you're looking into your garden, you want to know what causes a rose, but you also have to know what causes a weed, because a weed is a hindrance to your roses, isn't it? Your weeds can take over the roses and strangle them. So you want to know the causes of what is growing in your garden. Well, that's a really good analogy for the Buddhist approach. There are two causes of things. There's like the past seed that you planted. The past seed you planted, because seeds by definition come before the fruit, don't they? You've got to know the nature of the seed, and then that's the cause. So the main cause of a happy experience with your boyfriend isn't the boyfriend's kind words, is your past seed that you planted. This is the Buddhist analysis. The past seed we planted of an action like that now you're experiencing the fruit of, your boyfriend being kind to you. Of course, equally, then it's the same with the weeds, isn't it? So we tend in our life that we only tend to know why do the bad things happen. We don't worry about why the good things happen, but the logic is the same. The logic of botany refers both to weeds and herbs, weeds and roses. So, the Buddhist analysis is that the two in the Four Noble Truths, Buddha teaches very clearly in the second noble truth. The first one is there is suffering. The second one is there are causes. So there are hundreds of causes, hundreds of things that have to come together to produce that rose. But the Buddha's concern is the two main ones, both of which are inside ourself. So this is a part that's also pretty shocking. Your boyfriend isn't the main cause of your happiness. He's a secondary cause. Your boyfriend isn't the main cause of your suffering. He's merely a secondary cause. The main cause of your happiness is your past action driven by a positive state of mind. Two things. Your suffering is the fruit of your past action and the delusion that drove that action. So Buddha puts us in the center of responsibility for all our happiness and all our suffering. This is technically how Buddha's talking. Of course, it's so shocking to hear this. This is not how we think. I mean, this is absolutely not how we think. We do agree the past plays a role in who we are in the present. Well, so does Buddha. Totally. He totally agrees with you. We have to agree that the flower in the garden now is the product of the past. Everything's the product of the past, because the law of cause and effect runs the universe. It's nothing special. But for us, in our analysis, we only look at some aspect of the past. We only look at the event and the boyfriend and the mother and the father. We don't look at our past. Our past, we don't even consider we have a past, We're just this innocent victim who didn't ask to get born, to whom bad things happen, It's kind of interesting. The Buddha puts us in the center of responsibility. So, of course, many people who are Buddhists don't even think about karma. Many people, you don't have to. You're the boss. You can think what you like, But it's a crucial piece in the whole Buddhist analysis of why there is happiness and why there is suffering. So a person who's trying to be serious would have to look at this. Obviously, if you're trying to be a Buddhist, you want to look at Buddha's botany, don't you? You've got to look at his botany. You've got to look at his views of why there is a moment of suffering and why there is a moment of happiness. Because once you've established the reason why something happens, you can solve the problem. That's pretty logical. So to really do the job properly, as I said, you wouldn't need to look at what your boyfriend did. This is very shocking to hear this. This is really very, very, very shocking to hear this. Because if we think of happiness and think of suffering, you analyze this. If we think of happiness, and I say, I can see you smiling. Tell me, oh, why are you so happy, Mary? Why are you happy? You know perfectly well you will give me a detailed description of the event. And even when you remember happiness, you remember the event. So in other words, not only do we think that the event is the main cause of the happiness, we even think the event is the happiness. Think about this. We have all our memories. What are memories made of? Events. Not your own mind, events. So we're so addicted to the outside world, so addicted to believing that the outside world is the main cause of my happiness, or indeed my suffering, we even think it is the happiness itself. It's very fascinating. But the Buddhist view of the mind, when you study it in more depth, happiness is a state of mind. It's your mind. It's a function of your mind. It's triggered by the chocolate cake. It's triggered by the boyfriend smiling at you. No argument there. But that's merely secondary. The happiness is your mind. And suffering is your mind. But again, we think it's the event. Tell me about your suffering, Robina, and I'll give you a detailed description of what the boyfriend did. If you're trying to do it as a Buddhist, you'd look into at the suffering itself and look into the states of mind that are arising that are the cause of your suffering. They would be attachment. They would be anger. It would be jealousy. It would be depression. These are the cause of the suffering. This is very hard to hear. We think they're the result, a natural result of what the boyfriend did. I can't help it. It is he caused me jealousy. He caused me depression. He caused me anger. That's how we think. And we don't analyze it. We never question it. And this is why it's such an intense job to do. It's like reversing the energy of a bomb to look into your mind. We don't even know what it means. What do you mean, look into my mind? That's why we have to study the Buddhist view of the mind, And that's why we start to go more deeply. We will then start to look at the conceptual stories that underpin the emotion that we think anger is, the emotion that we think jealousy is, the emotion that we think depression is. But the emotion is just the tip of the iceberg of the actual state of mind, which is the conceptual story. And that's where we start to have to listen more deeply, to listen to what is anger literally saying? What is the conceptual story? How would you spell out anger? What are the thoughts that make up anger? And this is the part that's hard. This is being a Buddhist. And it's the hardest job we'll ever do. Now, this doesn't mean the boyfriend doesn't play a role. Of course he does. He was kind to you. He was mean to you. They're facts. But they're the only things we tend to look at, And then we say, well, I'm allowed to be angry. Look at what he did. It's not the point, Allowed is not the point. This is a tough job. Not easy. Because we're so involved with the sensory consciousnesses, the things we see and hear and taste and touch and smell, because they play such a vivid role in our lives. They're the things that we have memories of. We keep the pictures of those in our mind, It's hard to put a picture in your mind of anger. It's too abstract for us. So we're completely addicted to the outside world. And then we believe not only is it the cause of my happiness and suffering, but it is itself the happiness and suffering. Mistake. It's not enough analysis, Buddha says. It's more subtle than that. And that's what's hard. Because why do we have to do this job? It's very simple, because Buddha's telling us that the main source of my suffering and the main source of my happiness, the main source of my happy feelings and the main source of my suffering feelings is not the event, is my states of mind. So therefore I have to know the mind quite intimately, don't I? If that's the case. And that means then even more radically that I can change my mind. So you might be in a situation that normally would trigger unhappy feelings. Let's say, being in a prison, which is usually a pretty ugly place. And let's say, especially if you're innocent, let's say you're in prison and you're innocent, then, the logic we have is that there's no question you're going to be absolutely out of your brain with rage and despair. And we don't think it's possible to change. Well, that's the Buddha's point. He says, honey, you can. That's why I always tell the examples of my friends in prison. Extreme examples, when your back is against the wall and you can't possibly change the situation. We kind of instinctively feel we are locked in the inner prison, knowing I have no choice. I have to be miserable because look at me, I've been accused of something I didn't do. And don't wait till you're put into prison. We get accused every day. Our boyfriend thinks we did something we didn't do. Our mother accuses us. Our boss accuses us. Our colleagues accuse us. This is happening all the time, and we become paralyzed. Because we believe that they're the cause of the suffering. Number one, the suffering state of mind, the anger, the hurt. And then we think I can't change it. That's the killer. That's the part that's absolutely horrifying. And we can. But then we think, what do you mean I should change my mind? I didn't do anything wrong. I'm allowed to be angry. We talk like that. Well, of course you are. If you like, you can say you're allowed to be angry. You can do what you like. You're in charge of your life. You can do what you want. But the Buddha's simple point, and this is so fundamental, it's stuff that even nothing to do with karma. Think about this. If we had enough awareness of our thoughts moment by moment, we are going to notice the thoughts that are unhappy. And we're going to notice thoughts that are happy. And the Buddha says, well, guess what? There's the proof. You want to be happy? Well, make sure you have happy thoughts. You don't want to suffer? Well, stop having negative thoughts. It sounds hilarious to us. What do you mean stop having negative thoughts? It doesn't even occur to us. We think we're allowed to be angry. It's so bizarre, actually. So all Buddha's saying is there's nothing special. All he's saying is you can change your mind. So you might be in a situation that you can't change, but you can change your mind, honey. That's all he is saying. And that means we have to look at why we would want to change our mind. Because guess what? Anger feels terrible. Jealousy feels terrible. Depression feels terrible. Low self-esteem feels terrible. It's not easy to change them because they're habits. No, there's no argument there. It's not as if you can just change overnight. But at least if we can take that approach and notice the jealousy, and learn to analyze what it is, learn to listen to the conceptual story that informs the emotion called jealousy, learn to unpack it, and then to know it's a conceptual construct. It's a series of viewpoints, and I can change my viewpoints. They're just thoughts. This is the essence of the Buddhist approach to life, and the hardest job we'll ever do. Any questions, people? Anything on your mind? Think about that I might have triggered? Any questions?
Venerable, I have a situation.
Go on, tell us.
And I've been trying to work with it for weeks and weeks, and I finally, I'm like, I just need to talk to Venerable Robina, and she'll fix it for me.
Okay, go on.
My mother recently got cancer, and she's been vaccinated from COVID. But my brother, who came to visit her with his new wife, doesn't believe in getting vaccinated. And that was a point of anger for me because I felt like he was putting her in danger.
Exactly.
And so I tried to talk to him about it, and that didn't go, it didn't go very well. And I tried talking to my mother and showing her concerns and having her talk to her doctor. And you know what, she wanted what she wanted. She wanted to see my brother, and my brother wanted to see her. So fine, I just kind of left it alone. And I thought that I was like, okay, I've been working on this. I'm getting rid of the anger. And then it would just come welling up. She would bring it up again. So it was just, it's just like I keep thinking that I've dealt with it, and then it just comes whoosh right back up again.
I understand. But so the thing is, Alexis, every word you've said indicates like if you want to tick the boxes and you just answered questions in an exam, you get 100%. You said everything perfectly. You are doing everything perfectly. The only thing you're not doing perfectly is you have a false expectation that that it all should be gone. No, that's the expectation that's you're doing nothing wrong. All you got to know is these habits die hard, baby. You're doing everything correct. Your mother has made a decision. Your brother has made a decision. Let them do what they want. And then you think about it, your attachment is not getting what it wants. That's why you're angry. You think they should be doing something different, but it's not your business. Let them do it. So then it's going to take time. So every time you see it, you go, wow, there it is. It's still there. It shows it's an old habit. And every time you catch it, you think, you do an analysis, and you let it go. But it's a false expectation to think that, oh, I've dealt with it and it should be gone. Honey child, it's not until you realize emptiness until finally all these thoughts go at the subtlest level. There are layers of them, and you're doing everything perfectly. There's nothing you're not doing. There's nothing you should do better. But every time you see it, don't be disappointed that it's still there. That's the false expectation. So everything's perfect. It just does take time, and that's what's painful, because we wish it had gone. You understand?
Yeah.
And all you're doing, so every time you see it, you realize you've got aversion, and aversion do the analysis. Aversion, anger is the response when your attachment, which is I want things to be a certain way. And even if you're right, Alexis, you might be morally right about the whole situation, but that's so big deal. So you're right. So what? But it's why you can't let it go. Anger is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. I say that a million times. When we understand that relationship between anger and attachment, which is not a typical one, that's not evident to us in normal daily life, but it's profound when you understand that. So just keep seeing your own mind and be happy to see it. Attachment and anger die hard, baby. Every time you see it, work on it, and you chip away at it. That's the main thing. And there's nothing more to do. Love your brother and love your mummy. Let them do what they have to do.
Okay. Thank you very much.
But there's nothing you're doing wrong. Remember that. And it's not right to think you should be rid of it yet. It's false. It's just, these habits are hugely hard. So every time it does arise, don't resist it and don't put yourself down. That's not the right analysis. It's just you notice how they're working. You recognize aversion. How dare he do this? How dare she do that? And you can't let it go like a dog with a bone. But the anger is what's above the deeper one, which is what I want it to be a certain way. Even if you're right, it doesn't matter. Attachment is the one that's holding on to it. And that is the response to the deepest illusion, which is the ignorance that clings to the self-existent Alexis. This is the analysis of the 3 poisons, and it's really profound. So just learn every time you see it, and then go, okay, it's taken time to change, relax, give it a go, blah, 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 and just watch like a hawk. That's it.
Thank you.
It's perfect. And at least keep your mouth shut. Don't say the words. That's profound.
I'm not.
That's perfect. Totally perfect. Because that's what causes the problems. When you keep arguing, keep going, that's when you kill each other. So that's the first level of practice. Keep the mouth shut, then you can see the thoughts. And then every time you see them, learn from them. Don't put yourself down. Don't be guilty. Don't be angry with yourself. That's a mistake. Do you understand, darling?
Yeah, I do. It's just when I get on the cushion and then I get up, I'm like, okay, it's good. I'm getting there. And then I'll talk to my mother and she'll pull out a zinger and I'm like,
I know, exactly. So the mistake is thinking that you've solved it. That's naive. Just be happy that you are dealing with it, and it's a process. So be on your cushion, be glad. So I am doing well, but it's still there. I'm going to grab it when it pops up again. But don't disappoint yourself by thinking it's all gone when it's clearly not ready. It takes time, this stuff. It's a very long process. But be glad with how much progress you are making, and be glad you're keeping your mouth shut. That's pretty profound.
Thank you.
Understand?
I do.
Good. Hello, Tracy.
Hello. So I have a question for you about happiness. How do we find happiness without being attached to happiness?
That's a very good question, Tracy. It's almost impossible the way we are now, but at least the starting point has to be to have the proper analysis of what happiness is, what attachment is. I mean, in Buddhist psychology, you study these words very precisely, and they fit into a very clear, coherent model of the mind, how these different states of mind function. So you need to know that more and more. But basically, happiness is just a feeling a pleasant feeling that arises, we know, that's triggered by something, isn't it? And an unhappy feeling is exactly the same. It's triggered by meeting a certain person. The happy feeling is triggered by having the cake. The potential for the happy feelings are there, and the unhappy feelings. So we have to be watching it like a hawk. So when the cake is there, and then you launch into the cake and you get all excited, and then you think the cake is the cause of my happiness, and of course you're going to get attached to the cake and the happiness, but that's the part that we have to just watch like a hawk. But like I just said to Alexis, don't expect to not be attached, because it's extremely subtle to be able to have a happy feeling without grasping at it. But just has to notice it and be aware of it, and as we keep progressing, we get better and better and better. Do you understand? I mean, the part of the problem is the happy feelings we get when we meet the cake, for example, just a simple example of the chocolate cake. Then naturally, all the expectation of attachment, the story in the mind is, wow, I can't wait to get the cake. All the anticipation, all the excitement, all the waiting for the happy feeling to come when you put the cake in the mouth. Then the happy feeling comes, and then the bigger mistake is believing the cake is the cause of it. At least don't buy into that. Know that the cake is merely the trigger, not the main cause of the happy feeling. The happy feeling, actually, the Buddha's view, the big picture Buddha's view is any moment of happiness you have, any pleasant feeling that arises moment by moment, they are literally, individually, each moment is the fruit of a past virtuous action you've done, God knows, 47 lives ago. These seeds are stored in your mind from your past virtuous actions. And what triggers the experience of those happy feelings, which are the fruit of past virtue, is the cake, the boyfriend, the pleasant music, or whatever it might be. So the analysis is the one to watch. That yes, the cake, my meeting the cake is triggering my happy feelings, but Tracy, stop believing it's the cake. The cake is not the main cause of the happiness at all. It's just a trigger. So even that analysis is good to have. Then you're just watching it, And then, of course, if you're really brave enough, you can have the pleasure. Don't be miserable. Have the cake. Have the pleasure. Enjoy the cake. And then you can there's all sorts of practices where you can think of offering it, not just holding on to it like a vampire. This is, and delight in it. Have the pleasure. Be happy with it, and delight in the pleasure, and think, may I continue to have pleasant feelings, and may I use it to be of benefit to others. And then you stop attached to it. You make it something more than just greedy. You understand?
Great. I like that a lot. Good. So, yeah.
That's why, especially in the Mahayana path, there's all these practices we can do where you offer the cake. Before you eat it, you offer the cake. And you can even offer the pleasure you get from the cake and delight in it and think, well, I want more pleasant feelings. There's nothing wrong with pleasant feelings. And we tend to think they're mixed with attachment, but they're not in their nature, they're not. So happy feelings. And eventually we can learn to have happy feelings from doing virtuous actions, not just from having cake. By being a kind person, happy feelings come from this, and that's marvelous. Then offer that to everybody and use it to be of benefit to others. It's good, instead of being greedy and holding on to it. You understand?
Right.
Yeah. Good.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks so much. All right.
Good, darling. Anyone else got a question? Who else is there here?
Maddie has a question.
Yeah. Okay. Just checking. Anybody else have a question? Nobody else. Okay, Maddie, talk to me, sweetheart.
Thank you very much, Robina. I was wondering I've been wondering for a few days now, what makes a day unfavorable versus a favorable day?
Oh, God, you've got to be an astrologer to find that out. The Tibetan astrology is one of the 5 sciences they study in the Tibetan Buddhist monastic university system, and I know nothing about it.
Okay, so it has, okay. Thank you, Venerable.
And they take it very serious. It's like a very serious science. It used to be once in our culture, but now it's just called superstition. But it's very serious science in the Tibetan Buddhist monastic university system, coming from the Indian one. They study it in great depth. So learning all the different conditions of active that come together that cause something to be auspicious and not auspicious. I have no idea. I haven't studied it.
Okay, thank you, Venerable Robina.
Okay. Anybody else?
Venerable Robina, I have one
Yes.
quick question.
Go ahead.
So this is about karma.
Yes.
I was trying to help get a kind of a large bug that was trapped inside a porch. I was trying to help it get out. I think I injured it.
Sure, of course, yes, I understand. Easy to do.
It probably died, to be honest.
Of course,
And
I understand,
it
yes.
completely unintended.
Of course, I understand, darling.
So I don't know what to do in these situations. I feel terrible,
I understand, darling. So we've got to understand, first we've got to understand the technology of the way karma ripened, the way karma is. And the key factor in determining the imprints we put in our mind, the seeds we plant in our mind come from the mind. If karma, the main piece in the doing of an action is the first one, which is the mental karma, and that is intention. So let's analyze that action you did. So the action was, there's 4 things in place for a complete action. So the first one, there has to be a sentient being. In this case, there was a bug. So there was a being. The second one is the mind involved in your action. So the action here is called saving the bug. Is that correct?
Yes.
What were you wanting to do with it? Was it kind of entrapped or what?
Yeah, it was trapped. I was trying to help it.
Okay, so your intention was, I want to save the bug. So that came along immediately, didn't it, with the motivation of compassion? Would you agree with that? So your intention was, I will try to release the bug, and the motivation was compassion. That's your mind involved in it. So now 3, you tried to do the action, but the mistake happened, and then you hurt the bug and you probably died. So the main part in there is the second part, which is your mind involved in it. You had an intention to do something, and your motivation was compassion. But out of whatever reason, you ended up hurting the bug. So clearly you didn't intend to hurt the bug, and you didn't have a negative motivation, did you?
No.
Did you? So that's what leaves the imprints in your mind. Virtue was left in your mind, but the result wasn't so good. So then you didn't do anything negative. Feeling bad about it, that's not helpful at all. It's like guilt. It's completely useless. You did mean well, but you have to argue you didn't have the wisdom to do the right action, and you ended up hurting the bug. We can do this every day with each other, isn't it? That's why His Holiness the Dalai Lama often says compassion. Okay, we can say that compassion is the main point, but compassion is not enough. You've got to have the wisdom to know with confidence that what you do will actually benefit the sentient being. So we can as Lama Zopa says, meaning well is not enough. And we can see in our own lives, we mean well 27 times, but we might make a mess half the time because we don't have enough wisdom to know the right word to say, the right action to do. We end up hurting a person. So, but as far as the karma, there's 2 things involved. One, there's what happened for the bug, its own experience, and 2 is your experience. Well, you meant well. well. You did mean well. So what you have to learn from this is, when you do your purification, you totally regret the harm you did, and you realize what's missing is not compassion, but is the wisdom to know how to help the bug. Do you understand?
I do.
That's what we lack. So learning from that, then you can have incredible compassion for the bug. And you can, at the time, you should have blown a mantra on it, blessed it. Did you do something like that?
Yeah, I
Okay,
did.
honey, you did everything you can, but learn, not just, oh, I meant well and leave it there. Don't feel guilty. That's useless. Learn that you didn't have the wisdom. That's pretty simple. We don't have the wisdom to know really what's best every single time. We just don't have that wisdom. So keep learning to continue to grow your compassion, but to continue to grow your wisdom, which is working on your mind and eventually getting advanced in your wisdom to know how to benefit sentient beings. That's it. Do you understand, darling?
I do. Thank you.
Good, good. Yes, Eileen, talk to me.
Hi, Venerable.
Sweetheart.
I have a question, and I'm sure that you've touched on this before, but I'm new. And
All of these, darling, they're all ancient history, but they're all good to talk about all the time, because every time we hear it, it goes a bit deeper, sweetheart. So it's good, Eileen. You talk to me.
okay, I suffer from bipolar disorder,
Yes,
and
darling.
so I struggle a lot on the cushion, off the cushion,
Exactly.
dealing with repetitive thoughts, dealing with unwanted feelings. I since I've started meditating over the past year, it's been very helpful to manage those things.
Exactly, yes.
I just when I hear some of the I feel like I want to take it a step higher, and I think I worry that because of the way my brain is, that I'll never be able to do that.
I understand, sweetheart. Well, darling, I don't want to kind of minimize the labels you're using, bipolar.
Sure.
But more and more, I know for myself, I've studied the Buddhist view of the mind, the more and more I apply it myself, that actually, in a way, I'm not being sarcastic here. Bipolar is the Buddhist view is what attachment and aversion. It sounds so cute and simple, but when our minds are, attachment has it's multifaceted. One aspect of attachment is always thinking about something we can't control. The commonest one is that we all can't control our minds, Eileen. It's nothing special. That's exactly the Buddhist analysis, where our minds are completely uncontrolled because we don't have methods in our culture to control them, except for drugs, or maybe some kind of therapy, maybe. But the Buddhist view is exactly this skill. So the uncontrolled mind of attachment, it can be completely never stopping having thoughts. That's, like you said, unwanted. There's nothing. Everybody in the universe, Eileen, has this. It's not trying to minimize yours, but we just don't call it that for everybody. So the way I put it is, we're all bipolar. It's literally a question of degree. Some people are much more extreme. I mean, we know examples of people completely out of control, go to the high and then go crashing down to despair. Everybody's like this to some degree or another. You understand? I mean,
Yes.
back in the 60s, my entire family, my 6 siblings and me, we were all diagnosed. They called it then manic depression. It's just we've all got these busy minds, but it's just the nature of human mind, actually. But we just sometimes and yes, a brain plays a role, but these are the thought processes. So one of the things is, use whatever methods, use whatever drugs you feel that help you, but try to analyze it differently. Try to know that this is human nature. It's the way the mind is. Attachment goes berserk. It's uncontrolled. We can't concentrate. The mind is repetitive. These are functions of attachment mind, the way Buddhism talks about it at a much more subtle level. And then when they go crashing down, you get all excited, then the mind goes down. Then we get despair, we get anger, we get aversion, we get depression, and then we go up again. Honey child, join the universe, Eileen. Do you understand what I'm saying, darling?
Yes.
So, of course you're capable. You don't worry about your brain. They've even now proving Buddha's point that we're not stuck with the brain we're born with. People even now proving that the brain can change by the way you think. So the Buddha's expertise is not working on the brain, it's working on the actual cognitive process itself. So darling, be humble, be patient, do what practices you can, learn to become friends with your mind. Don't beat yourself up. Don't think it's hopeless. It is not hopeless, Eileen. Just keep moving, sweetheart. Take whatever method you can and learn to make friends with your crazy thoughts. That's one of the biggest things we can do. I call them all my roommates, So we have to learn to listen to the crazy roommates and listen, but you've got to bring out your good roommates as well, because they're the positive thoughts. If we get so involved in the negative ones and then criticize ourselves and beat ourselves up, we just spiral down, darling. So we have to be brave about your mind. Don't be scared of your thoughts. Use every method you can, do whatever you can, but be patient and be humble with yourself and know that it is not hopeless. And everybody's the same to one degree or another. Does that make sense, Eileen?
Yes, so much sense.
But just
Thank you
go
so
one
much.
step at a time, darling, and have some confidence. Don't exaggerate. Don't. I mean, all the deluded thoughts always exaggerate. We exaggerate our badness. We exaggerate this. So try not to exaggerate. Be reasonable. See your crazy thoughts, but you learn to live with them and not buy into every story they tell you. You know, understand, and learn to know. Try and identify more with your potential, with your positive thoughts. It's something so simple, but something quite profound, sweetheart.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much.
One step at a time, darling. I promise. Okay.
Thank you.
Good, Eileen. Thank you so much. Yes, Lou.
I have a question about good karma.
Okay, Lou, go.
Okay, I've been watching killing and lying and all that stuff, but that's what I've been doing. I mean, I haven't been. I see a bug, I don't kill it. I have a chance to lie, I don't lie.
Oh, yeah.
But I heard something where if I don't start off with when I see the bug, if I don't say I'm not going to kill the bug, then it doesn't do me any good not to kill the bug.
But no, but I mean, the very fact that you don't kill the bug happens because your mind decides.
Okay.
It's true, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's like you notice the bug, and so you'd think, of course, because if you didn't notice the bug and you didn't happen to also harm it, then in that sense there'd be no karma because your mind didn't say anything, or your mind didn't do anything. So just merely, but this is why having vows is so powerful, and we've discussed this already via email, and it's going to happen. That's why the power of vows is so marvelous, that every 24 hours a day you're keeping your vow, you're creating the virtuous karma, even without the conscious intention at that moment. Buddha says that's how powerful vows are. And that's why it's so marvelous to have the vows, you know. But yeah, of course, your mind has to be involved.
Okay.
Yes, it does. I mean, go on.
I was going to say one more question.
Yes.
If I say the vows to myself,
yes,
every morning when I wake up,
that's marvelous, amazing.
Does that help reinforce it?
Of course it does, sweetheart. Of course it does, Lou.
Okay.
Of course it does. There's no question, because everything your mind does has benefit, you know. And the more conscious you are every day, I don't want to harm beings. I'll try my best not to harm beings. I'll try my best not to badmouth people. That's part of what you must do every day. You don't just sit there passive. You must do that every day. That programs your mind in those habits. Of course it does.
Okay.
It's just that the vows puts like a rocket boost under that, you know.
Okay.
You're programming
Thank you
your
very
mind
much.
every second. You're training your mind to think a certain way. That's what practice is every day, Lou. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Who else, people? Dearest people. What else is there? Nothing. So yeah, the thing about the mind, I think, is so fascinating, because in our culture, you know, we say, oh, it's only in the mind. Don't we say that? It's only in the mind. And one of our big things is we've got this kind of our private life. We all have these, you know, I mean, we all have these fantasies and we have these yearnings. Some people live in their fantasy, where they live in their, like in video games all day in your mind. Some people think about sex all day and have fantasies all day. Some people fantasize about, we all do that. And we think, oh, it's only in the mind. As long as nobody else sees it, it doesn't matter. That's how we feel. But that is the most shocking nihilistic view, you know. The mind doesn't matter. It's very bizarre. In other words, as long as no one sees me do it or sees me thinking it, it's okay. But that's just, the Buddha's view is so fundamentally simple that everything we think is not just important. It's not a question of morals. It's not a moralistic issue. Everything we think is what produces the person we become. I mean, that's like saying you try to become a musician, but it doesn't matter what I think. I can think that F is G. I can think that this chord is that chord. You can think it. Of course you can, but you won't become a musician. You'll make a mess. So every thought counts. And we understand that when it comes to learning to be a cook. Everything we understand in the world, science, music, being a good cook, every thought actually is crucial to be the right thought. Think about it. You've got to have the right thought about the cake. You've got to have the thought 1 teaspoon of sugar before you put the teaspoon of sugar into the bowl. So every thought does count. But when it comes to morality and happiness and suffering, we have this bizarre idea that thoughts don't matter. It's quite schizophrenic, frankly. It's quite bizarre. It's quite unintelligent. And also our trouble is we hear that in terms of you're a naughty person. We hear it in terms of guilt and bad and punishment and reward, you know. We're like infants. It's so kind of childish. I remember always one example for me is hilarious. years ago, 20, 30 years ago, I saw on my iPad. Well, it can't be 30 years ago. There weren't iPads, were there? But anyway, it was the New York Times. I remember reading the New York Times on my iPad. So it must have been 20 years ago. Who knows? 15. And I remember this woman in New York got into her husband's computer, and she discovered he was part of a cannibal website. And they were discussing planning to kill and eat her. Well, she got quite a shock, didn't she? Of course she did. She didn't just go to the police. She went to the FBI. I think that's very funny, actually. So anyway, the court case, this is my point. The court case, the lawyer for the husband, his position was, of course, he's allowed to think this. It doesn't mean he's going to do it. So that's really the proof that we don't realize that what we think produces what we do. We don't see any connection between our thoughts and our actions. I mean, if that's not schizophrenic, I don't know what is. That's like you're thinking all these crazy thoughts about music, but a perfect piece of music comes out. It's impossible. You've got to have the right thoughts about musical theory. Understand this. The musical theory starts with thoughts. It's thoughts. If you don't have the right musical theoretical thoughts, how in the name of God can you play the piano? So to actually think, well, they're allowed to have all these fantasies about what music is and still be able to play Bach. Don't be ridiculous. It's quite demented, actually, but that's how we think in our weird, weird world, It's very strange. I mean, think about it. It's not moralistic, it's practical. So if we understood that every thought we have produces the person we become, who would ever want to have an angry thought, jealous thought, depressed thought? Now, don't get disappointed because you're going to have them because they're habits. But you're going to be watching yourself like a hawk. It's like eating poison. You wouldn't want to do it. Rather than, oh, well, no one knows I'm being jealous. As long as I only do it in my own private mind, it doesn't matter. No, that's insanity. It's got to be driven by self-respect, It's like eating poison. It's like thinking that just because you eat poison doesn't mean you're going to get sick. Of course it does. So it's this practical attitude to your mind, not this moralistic, heavy, guilty, I'm bad, I'll get judged, I'll get punished, which is how we think of this stuff. We think of it as religion, It's just craziness. So practical, really. And it's coming from self-respect. Who would want to produce an angry, unhappy person? But you see, that's the problem. We don't think our mind plays a role. We think it's the boyfriend that makes me angry. We think the boyfriend is making me depressed. We think the boyfriend is the problem, not me. So we don't, and as Lama Zopa says, and I repeat it, and it's too shocking to hear, but get the point. The vast majority of human beings on this planet have absolutely no idea that what goes on in their mind plays any role at all in their lives. And all that means is they know they're angry, they know they're depressed, but it's the boyfriend that did it. That's what he means. That's all. We know we're angry, but it doesn't play any role. It's the boyfriend who's the total cause, That's how we think. So this is just like, yeah, what Buddha's saying is kind of profound. It's outrageous, That's why it's so important to hear it in a down-to-earth way, not religion. It's practical psychology. Buddha's a genius cognitive therapist. There's no doubt about it, Okay, any other questions, people? Before we've got 15 minutes to go. Yes, Susie. Yes, sweetheart.
Thank you for the class, Venerable.
All right, darling.
I asked about this ages ago, and your advice really helped. And the problem went away, and then it's come back. It's a big fat problem again. It's sort of embarrassing to talk about it, but I'm so sick of it that I want to bring it up. I have, at the tender age of 41, a crush for the first time in my life. I've loved people before, but I've never known what a crush is like. And it's completely debilitating and not romantic and gorgeous. It makes me completely cuckoo. And she lives on my street. So every time I deal with it, she comes past and I'm bang. And it's just so what it is, a crush is simply attachment gone berserk. You're just having this like a teenager gone berserk. That's exactly, I feel like my teenage son. Yeah. Okay, then don't be disappointed that you've got it. Be glad you've got it. And why should you be glad you've got it? So that I can deal with it once and for all. If you don't know what's in your mind, how can you deal with it? So that because you're working on your mind, because you're practicing, Susie,
Don't be disappointed you've got it. Your attachment's gone berserk. It's the dirt coming out. As Amazopa said to one of my friends who's being, and I mean, this is exactly the point. When, when you start to work on your mind, you notice it 1,000 times more. That's the point. But we think it's getting worse. Your attachment is not getting worse, Susie. With this particular female person whom you're in at the moment, girls who trigger you, girls get you all excited. So now this particular person is triggering the attachment that's already been in your mind since beginningless time. So in your mind, you have to be glad it's there. You have to taste the vomit of it. You have to listen to it, look at it, analyze it, look at the stories it's saying, argue with it, see it for what it is. It's a perfect example because you're practicing. You don't need to talk about it to anybody. Okay, you've confessed it to all of us, join the universe here. So then, and it's a marvelous opportunity. That's the attitude you should have, not that you're sick of it, that you just, good to be sick of it, but that just becomes anger with yourself, and that's no good at all. You just try to push it away, and that's useless. You can't push it away, darling. So that's why I always tell the story of my friend as a monk, serious meditator, 3-year retreats, 4-year retreats for 30 years. And at some point out of his brain with extra levels, not of attachment in this case, but anger and arrogance out of his mind. And he went to Lama Zopa so distressed. And Rinpoche laughed and laughed and laughed. And he said, fantastic. The dirt has to come out. So that's the attitude to have, because you're working on it. Like the example I always use, when you go to the gym, you discover muscles you never knew you had. So the muscles have always been there, but the gym is activating the pain. So your practice is activating this arising of intense attachment. Be glad, analyze it, look at it, swim in it, taste the vomit of it. Do not resist it, but don't follow it. Don't believe in it. That's the attitude, sweetheart.
Thank you.
Do not resist it and don't have aversion. Don't say, be sick of it, but then you be the being sick of it is helping you do the work of looking at it, unpacking it and unraveling it. So you can see, and this is also where you apply the other techniques, like you see it as impermanent. You start to analyze the emptiness of it. When the more you analyze the object and you unpick all the pieces of this object, this female person, this female body, basically, because you don't know her, you unpack and you realize there's nothing there. It's just a fantasy you've made up. That's the real way to learn. Realize it's a complete fantasy made up by your mind, and you analyze that and you see that, and that's why it's marvelous practice. Yes, that's the right approach to it, sweetheart. Good, good, good. And rejoice in your hard work. Yes, Sherry, hello.
Hi, how are you? I would like to think or need some guidance to figure out where happiness fits in.
Good, darling. Go.
I'm asking because I've tried to do a lot of work in the last year and a half, or maybe a little bit more, with respect to analyzing the attachments and having more intentionality, and at the end of the day thinking about what could I have done differently to be
wonderful.
more in line with. So
Wonderful.
all that we've discussed, I guess, before. And not that I expect happiness to come. However, I'm just trying to figure out maybe, how best to think about it, because through the work and the analysis, obviously it doesn't lead to happiness. I'm not sure what the right.
So you mean following it? You've learned that following attachment doesn't lead to happiness. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that whatever analysis that I've done, about attachment, etc., I haven't reached any kind of happiness myself. Like, I don't think if someone looks at me, they don't think I'm a happy person. I want to be, because I want people around me to be happy.
I understand. Well, let's analyze happiness, Sherry. It's a really, really, really good point. Okay. So technically, a happy feeling, the way they analyze in our lives, we only have 3 kinds of feeling. The way they use the word is quite distinct. It's not an equivalent of an emotion. You've either got pleasant feelings, another word is happy feelings, unpleasant feelings, or you have neutral feelings. Well, forget the neutral. They do play a role, but we don't worry about those here. So we know, if we look even at the analysis of the different thoughts we have. In the Buddhist analysis, there are some thoughts that are neurotic, deluded, fear-based, unhappy, and miserable in their nature. Then there are some thoughts that are valid and reasonable and happy in their nature. So actually, technically, happiness comes from having virtuous thoughts and doing virtuous actions. Long term, because you sow seeds in your mind and they will ripen as a future moment of happiness, or even short term. So if we can, so then by doing the analysis, working on your mind, it's so serious. So you should be happy. So how are you? Don't wait passively for happiness to come. You've got to learn to have happy thoughts, which means virtuous thoughts, which means praise yourself. Like I was saying to Susan, delight in your progress. Be glad that you're doing it. It mightn't come immediately. It doesn't come immediately. Like when you have the cake, the happy feeling comes immediately. But then it doesn't last. It turns into yucca, you know. But this way, you've got to cultivate having positive thoughts. We tend not to do that. You're doing all the analysis, you're pointing out your own faults, you're seeing things, but you're forgetting to do rejoicing. You're forgetting to be happy for yourself. You're forgetting to praise yourself. You're forgetting to tell yourself you're doing a good job. They're the thoughts that will eventually develop and cause you to feel happy, to be glad, like you did a good job. I've done a good job. And that will grow, and slowly you'll believe you've done a good job, and happy feelings will come from that. Do you understand?
Yeah, I do. I think I have the karma that's not kind of in line with that, obviously.
Go on.
Only because, you know, kind of growing up in the history of family, you know, history, you know, if you did kind of delight, I think you would call it more superstition. You know, if I delighted too much, like I wouldn't dare, because, you know, the understanding was that, well, then something bad's going to happen if you delight too much. Which is superstition, I think you would say.
But it's almost like we're scared to have happy thoughts. I remember Lama Yeshe, when he first met us Westerners, he said, you people don't even know how to be happy. You know how to be miserable. And this is really true. It's sort of like we don't know how to have self-respect, Sherry. We love to hate ourselves. We love to find faults. We love to put ourselves down. So if you're practicing, it's good to see your faults, but then you rejoice in your virtue that you can see your faults. It's like you've just done a hard work in the gym. You come home exhausted, but you are glad that you know you've done a good job. The happy feelings will come definitely in the future. You've got to be delighting if you've done a good job at the gym. You feel bad, but you've done a good job. We've got to learn to do that, Sherry, and we do not do it, darling. And it's so terrible. We just think there's virtue in always being miserable, you know. But you've got to start having more positive thoughts. That's what is. And that softens your mind. That softens your heart. And then you can learn to have happy thoughts about other people. You can learn to rejoice when other people are happy. You can rejoice in when good things happen for other people instead of jealousy and resentment or something. So we've got to just consciously work on the negative thoughts and actively, proactively have positive thoughts. Don't wait for them to come. Say them. This is simple but profound, sweetheart. Because virtuous thoughts soften our hearts. So you must rejoice every day in what you're doing. And then that makes you more courageous to then see your faults without beating yourself up. You understand what I'm saying, Doctor?
No, I understand. I was thinking that I'm going to be 60 this coming week. So I figured if the first 60 years were like this, then I could kind of be happy for the rest.
You can.
Because I've done enough.
Yes, you have done. And the fact is, if you ticked all the boxes about how good you are right now, and you would praise anybody who was doing the work that you're doing, but we always tend to find the fault in ourselves. This is our worst tragedy. We're always dissatisfied with ourselves, Sherry. And this is really so sad. We have to start seeing the good things, darling. I mean, we know we love other people to praise us, but we're too scared to do it ourselves. And then you're absolutely right. It's so superstitious. It's really wicked. We've got to praise ourselves and have happy thoughts. I don't mean like be Pollyanna and walk around being stupid, but you're working so hard on yourself. You should be so praising of yourself. You should be making yourself happy, not just wanting someone else to praise you. You must praise yourself. It's called self-respect, and they will bring happy feelings. I promise you. It'll make you more content. Do you understand, darling?
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
You've done a good job so far. May you live another 60. Good, darling. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, look, you people, 6 minutes to go. Gone like a dream as usual, our hour. But we fit so much in, so it's good. All people being so kind, telling them about yourselves. And we're all in the same boat. We all recognize everything everybody says. You know, we recognize Sherry's things, we recognize Susie's, we recognize Lou, we recognize Alexis. We're all the same. That's just why it's encouraging to hear each other. You know, it's so good. So amazing. So rejoice, everybody. We've got to do it. I mean, we just got to do it. We just got to do it. That means check, you know, you check on your day You regret the rubbish, and then you praise yourself for your effort. And we all know when someone comes to you and they say they're bad this and they did this wrong, and you keep thinking, well, look at all their good qualities, but they never see it themselves. This is how we all are. It's the irony of ego, I tell you. So the trouble is, of course, we're scared it'll become pride. But, you know, this is where you have to learn the distinction in Buddhist psychology. The particular characteristics of the neurotic states of mind is that they are very fixed and concrete and eye-based, and they distort and exaggerate. So pride is an over-exaggeration of your good qualities. Humility is an act, or self-confidence is completely different. Self-confidence is an accurate assessment of what you've done, an accurate assessment of your good qualities. And that comes with humility. But the irony of arrogance is it's an over-exaggeration, like a defensive over-exaggeration of your good qualities. And that also comes along with low self-esteem. And they're painful. The characteristic of all the delusions is that they're painful. The characteristics of the positive thoughts is they're not painful. This is something profound and something unique to the Buddhist approach, you know. Got to see it this way. So having positive thoughts, kind thoughts, praising thoughts, loving thoughts, rejoicing thoughts. This is like medicine for the mind. And then you can do it for others, and that makes you even more happy, you know. Happiness comes from positive thoughts. It sounds so hilarious. It's almost like a joke, but it's true. So keep moving, people. Keep moving. Never give up. What else before we finish? Anything
If
else?
you have one, Beth has a question if you have a minute.
Yes, good, Beth. Go, darling.
What would an example of you want to create, like with the causes and conditions? So you want to create good conditions for people around you, but I definitely don't have any wisdom to see where everybody's at. So what's like,
What do you mean?
like
I'm a bit confused, Beth. What do you mean, darling?
you want to create good conditions for other people around you. So like if
What do you mean
people
by
have,
that? What do you have to tell me what you mean by that?
so like, for example, like when I deal with my mom, instead of thinking the troublesome part, I try to see good things about her.
Okay, darling. So what you mean, how can I
compliment them.
so what you're asking is, Beth, how can I think differently? So when you're with other people, okay, when you're with other people, try
How
to
do I encourage them?
No,
Is
no,
what I mean.
What do you mean by encourage them to do what?
So like my mom, for example, she usually has a lot of neurotic actions. So she'll say to me, oh, I went to the grocery store today and I gave somebody a compliment and it just felt so good. So I try to encourage those behaviors in other people, almost like just rejoicing in other people,
right.
so that
That's
they want to
perfectly
do
fine.
that more.
That's perfect. Nothing wrong with that. But the other one is also you simply do the one of being kind and loving and patient and praise and generous to other people. So that's the general bodhisattva attitude. See, there's the two wings of the bird. One wing is the wisdom wing, which is all this inner work we're all trying to do, which is your own private business. Do you understand what I'm saying by that, Beth? Like there's Susie dealing with all her crazy attachment. She doesn't have to vomit all that out. That's nobody else's business. That's the inner work she has to do. That's the wisdom wing. Now, when you're with other people, you do the bodhisattva wing, which is you think I'm there solely for their benefit. So when you're with your mum, just think you're there for your mum. That means you love your mum, you praise your mum, you do what she wants, you try to make her happy. That's the job to do when you're with other people. You can't manipulate them, you can't control them, you can't give them lectures. Don't do any of that. Just try to feel whatever I do is maybe it's for as long as I'm with my mum, that's what I'm going to do. I'm with this next door neighbor for 5 minutes. What can I listen to them? Praise them, thank them, be kind to them. That's it. That's the one. That's the one. When you're with others, you try to make them happy. When you're on your own, you look at your mind. Do you understand? Good, darling. Well done. Well done, Beth. Well, that's it for the day. All right, people. Much love, everybody. Never give up. See our own minds. Do the wisdom wing, which is our own stuff. Have our hands in our own vomit and be glad, but then praise ourselves after, and then start to see all the good stuff as well. So when Susie does all her junk, not to resist it, not to be wishing it would all go away, but to be glad she's seeing her mind, to be glad she's seeing attachment and how it's a fantasy and how it's causing her so much pain. And then she has to finish by rejoicing that she's doing this work. Every one of us, we forget to do that. We absolutely have to do that, because that's what brings happiness. It's like she's been to the gym, and her muscles are all aching, but you praise yourself. I'm doing a good job. This is fantastic. I can't stress how important that is, everybody. Okay. Thank you, darlings. See you next time. Much love. Bye. Bye-bye.